What's up, everybody? My name's Travis, also known as TI Trading Wiz. Today I want to go over a different style of trading than some of my other videos. This is going to be more of a scalping strategy, and there's nothing wrong with taking longer trades on YM and versus taking scalps on NQ. Both can be profitable. In fact, I am of the opinion that most trading strategies can be profitable with enough practice and enough confluences and restrictions around the trading idea. I think anything can be profitable. Scalping is extremely profitable, and it can be. And I'll show you how I basically took an evaluation account and got it funded in less than a day. Being able to, make $3,000 on a $50,000 account in a day is something that's normal. And you'll see from the actual chart, and you'll see kind of from my P&L graph on these accounts that this isn't luck. This is actually a strategy that is actually very, very profitable over time and can be a great way to get your first payout in a relatively shorter period of time. That being said, scalping is hard, takes a lot more discipline, and it can be a lot more emotional for people. So let's go ahead and jump over to the chart here. So I'm using a Renko chart with a traditional box size, and the box size is 4 electric hours on. I have an EMA of 21 on the chart, and I have this is my Q wave settings. You can go ahead and pause it here. Just copy those, and we're going to jump right into the chart. So Q line wave, Q line band bounces are basically all I'm scalping, and I'm scalping typically about $100 profit per contract that I'm trading. So if I'm trading 3 NQ contracts, I personally aim for about $400 per trade, but I'm totally fine cutting it off at 3. Sorry if I'm coughing, I'm a little sick. So what we have here is going to be a midline Q line bounce, right? Boom, a little bit of profit. Keep in mind, we just made a higher low. So when we coming up into this, it shows no signs of weakness. We're not going to trade that. We're only going to trade once we start to see it start to turn over. Once we start seeing a little bit of a Renko form, then that's when we're going to go ahead and take the trade. The first time it touches the the top band, once you see weakness, you can take that short, make a little bit of profit. Q line band, Q line doesn't respect it at all, goes right through it. You wouldn't long this because why? It didn't show any bullish signs. Okay. And in fact, once it goes through the Q band or the Q line, you can go ahead and technically short it, but that's a little bit harder to do. It's a little bit harder to do, but you can do it, and you can be profitable doing that as well. We come right through, wouldn't trade. We don't respect the band, wouldn't trade. We're coming back up. You could again take this long, but I wouldn't. And we're going coming back down. This is a beautiful midline bounce here, right there. I would take that long. Just be careful once it's coming back into the Q line, because you could see it go boop, boop, right? So just be a little bit aware if you're going to try to capitalize on that going long. Once we come back up, we kind of form a tight double top. I typically don't like to trade the top band, but once we kind of a double top, we're showing kind of some weakness. Potentially you could take that short. That'd be not a A+ setup. This is not an A+ setup either, but again, you could, once it crosses the midline band, you could take it. Be careful coming into the Q line. You could capitalize on that. I wouldn't trade any of this. This is a Q line bounce. I definitely would trade that. Once we come back up or coming back down, would I trade this? Potentially. I would be looking for a long. Once it failed though, we come back and then we reject off of it again, I'm definitely taking that short. That's a great short. Once it comes through the Q line, comes back up and then rejects off of it, beautiful trade, beautiful trade. We're going from the top band to the bottom band. You can always look to try to scalp the bottom band if you're coming from the top to the bottom, or the bottom band to the top. If you're coming from the mid band, right, like here to the bottom band, don't look to scalp it. Only look to scalp the top to bottom band if potentially you're coming from the top to all the way to the bottom, right? On the first touch. Other than that, I wouldn't mess with it. It's not an ideal setup. I would say that's like a C setup at best. Then midline bounce, go ahead and take that short. Looks awful. Maybe I would be looking to short this here, but it doesn't play in my favor. We come up, we come down, and we're on top of it, and then we start coming up again. Great long. Same setup. Boom, 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 boom. It's the same setup. This is an A+ setup. You take this every single time. We come back up to the midline, short the midline, long the little, actually you wouldn't long that because it didn't quite touch. I would short the midline again here. I would long that, short this. So this is kind of a chop zone. Again, this is where I make a lot of my money. Man, when we're in like a little chop sideways zone, ooh, you can make a lot of money in this little zone. You can also lose a lot of money in this little zone if you're wrong, right? But the more you trade this, the more easier it is to see consolidation like this and be able to trade in that consolidation. The longer this goes on, the weaker things get. So we've touched this, touched this, touched this. We've only touched this side one time. So what's the side that's most likely to potentially give out is going to be the top side. You got to be careful. The third, fourth, especially the third and fourth touches in the same place, be extremely careful. You're going to be very careful on that fourth touch. In fact, I wouldn't even trade a fourth touch. But even if you did, let's say you did try to short this, right? As soon as it starts to break and go higher, you're going to kill that trade, immediately turn it long and see what happens. Usually you can flip it and, you know, make at least what you lost on that last trade back. Wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade. I wouldn't trade that. Midline bounce, trade it. Wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade. We have potentially, see, this is where you would definitely probably take a losing trade. You come down to the midline, you get a little bullish, you start pushing up. I would definitely have taken that long, right? And I probably would have got stopped out. Potentially probably would have just flipped it too. As soon as we failed to push a little bit higher and we started coming back around, I would probably just reverse that trade and take a little bit of profit. We have a little bit of a W. We come back up, midline bounce with Q line, great play. And so that's kind of the idea of a Q line bounce strategy. Here, we'll do one more day here just to kind of go over it really quickly. Nasty, didn't trade. That's like, it's an okay setup, but it's not great because you're kind of through the Q line, right? I would trade that potentially. I would trade that. I wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade, wouldn't trade. Probably would take that short. That would be a losing trade. But it's also potentially a winning trade. You know, if you saw it kind of going up and down, it's oscillating. Take a little bit of profit and get out. Midline bounce, that would be a winning trade. Q line, that would be a winning trade. Potentially taking a Q line bounce there with a midline, you probably would be able to get it out for a little bit of profit if you killed the trade correctly. If not, you would have probably at least broke even or maybe taken a little bit of a loss. We're come down through, we come back up. We're on the Q, we're in between the midline and the Q line. This is kind of one of those ones where you can get chopped up because once we start to come up, you could have tried to take this long again. And once we rejected off the Q line, you would need to flip it and take it short relatively quickly. So let's just count this as like just a losing trade. We come back down to the lower band. Again, we're not coming from all the way up here. I wouldn't take it. You come up, Q line bounce, I would go ahead and short that. I capitalize on a little bit of win. Not trading the lower band. Q line bounce, boom. Q line bounce with a lower band bounce. That's beautiful. Q line bounce there, beautiful. And potentially a Q line bounce there. So you can kind of get the idea that, hey, like this is going to work. This is going to play in your favor. You will have losing trade scalping, period. It's going to happen, I promise. But as you can tell that, one, your winners are going to be bigger than your losers, especially if you can cut the trades correctly, if you get good at your entries, right? And you can tell that this is going to play in your favor. Now, how do people lose in scalping? One, people start to try to catch the bottom. That's the number one thing I see people do, right? Is you're trying to catch the bottom. So you're coming here and you're like, okay, bottom line bounce, right? Wrong. You went a little bit lower, right? And you're trying to catch this falling knife. Try and catch a falling knife with no indicators, no levels is a hard thing to do. Now, something that you can do, let's see if it shows up correctly, is use the standard pivots. It doesn't work correctly on Rincos at all. Well, I will try to find pivots that work on Rincos, or you could pull up pivot points on another, like a 1 minute chart, and just keep that up on the side, because that is potentially a good trade. And the only thing that I would suggest, if you trade a pivot point or you're trading off a previous level that also aligns with the lower band, now that's a good trade. Now that's confluence, right? So what would be confluence here? Boom, that would be a confluence trade, right? Right. So we have a double bottom from the day before. What does that line up with right here? So you could take that. That's a pretty solid trade. So I hope that Q line, Q band scalping makes a little bit of sense. It's one of the things that you have to be patient. The number one mistake you will make scalping will be trying to catch a falling knife. That is what you have to be careful on what not to do. You can see, if you see the trend of the day as a downtrend, right? It is a much better idea for you to wait for a midline bounce, wait for a Q line bounce and short it, than for you to try to long the bottom. This is why I say stay away from a Q band bounce on the bottom or the top, unless you're coming from the top to the bottom and it is showing a change in direction. You can then potentially capitalize on it, but it is extremely hard. It is not an A+ setup. Don't do it. Anyways, I hope that kind of helps maybe some of y'all maybe potentially get into scalping on NQ. It is a much faster paced game. It is a lot quicker way to blow accounts, but it is also a very fast way to make a lot of money in a very short period of time. And I hope this helps at least somebody get funded, and hopefully get somebody to a first, maybe second, third, fourth payout with Apex. Anyways, I'm done rambling on. Make sure you guys like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.